Okay. While doing research into autoimmune conditions, I found a correlation between autoimmune and neurological disorders, which actually really fascinated me. Now, what I am going to say right off the bat is that these subjects are not sensitive, but they are controversial, completely controversial. But if you find talking about stuff like this, like medical issues, things like this, triggering, then I'm letting you know now. I'm talking today. This entire video is about dementia. Although officially this is not what I was originally going to be talking about, but this one is on dementia. It's going to take me more than one video to do this, but that's what this is about. So if you're going to find this a bit triggering, then yeah, this is your warning to let you know. But like I said, I found a correlation between autoimmune conditions and neurological disorders. So I scrapped, but I didn't scrap it. I pushed it to one side for the next one, and decided to do dementia instead. I will go back to that one because it does link with dementia, which is kind of interesting. Never knew that. Because originally I was going to do Alzheimer's, which is an autoimmune condition, which is kind of interesting. Never realised that before. But Alzheimer's links to dementia. And dementia, I think, needs to be done first. Purely because the word dementia, everybody correlates as being a separate thing from Alzheimer's. Everybody knows that Alzheimer's people lose their memories and things like that, but everybody sees dementia as a whole separate entity, a condition all of its own. And so did I. But it's not. Because what I learned is dementia is not a diagnosis of its own. It's just not. It's actually a general term. I mean, this is the actual diagnosis. What it actually means. This is what dementia actually means. Okay, I'm going to read it. I'm just going to read it. Dementia is not a diagnosis in of itself. It's a general term for a wide range, just a wide range of neurological symptoms that will severely impact somebody's everyday life. That is what dementia is. That is what it means. That is what it does. And it's actually been found that 60 to 80% of cases of people that are actually diagnosed with it have Alzheimer's. I mean, that to me was incredible because I never linked the two conditions. I assumed they were two separate. People always do it, don't they? You either have Alzheimer's or you have dementia. They don't put the two together. In fact, nobody puts anything together as an actual whole condition. You know, you assume, you make the assumption that they're two separate. You know, you see a word, you see a diagnosis, but you don't assume they're one and the same diagnosis. Which is why I think this one's more important than the Alzheimer's one. I will do the Alzheimer's next. I will, once I finish this one. The Alzheimer's will be next. Just purely because there are actually different types of dementia. There really are. I mean, you have a vascular dementia. I mean, there are hundreds of different types of dementia. I am going to say this right now. There are a lot of different types of dementia, and if I went through all of them, this videos would never end. Literally would never end. So I'm only going to do the basics. and I'm only going to go through some of the information that I found. And I am going to say this right now, even a lot of the information that I did find is probably going to do, I'll be surprised if I do more than 3 videos. I'll probably do about 3 videos. I'll be surprised if I manage to do this in 2. I will be absolutely shocked. So I'm saying this will probably take about 3 videos to get the information I've found out there. This is just basic information. I mean, and let's face it, I did try to get this as basic as possible, but there's a lot of it, a hell of a lot of it. So there are different types of dementia. So we've got things like vascular dementia, which is the microscopic bleeding and things like the blocks in your blood vessels in your brain. So it's like brain bleeding, it's like bleedings in your brain. That's what it's about. It's to do with bleedings, your brain's blood vessels bleeding. I mean, that must be horrible. I'd hate that. No. But people who experience different types of dementia, there are people that experience more than one type of dementia, and you can have people that do that, and that's called a mixed dementia. Because they've found other conditions can cause symptoms of dementia. See, what they have found is that other medical conditions can cause symptoms similar to dementia as well. And those, if it's actually caused by a medical condition that are causing symptoms that are like dementia, some of those can actually be reversed. Things like vitamin deficiencies or even like thyroid issues. So yeah, which is kind of cool. One thing I did learn, which I did find kind of interesting, is this concept of dementia making you senile. Yeah, it's actually not right, it's incorrect. Now, I found this extract of a book, I did, talking about senile dementia. If you want to look it up, it's on www.sciencedirect.com, and there was it's senile dementia, and there were a couple of extracts from a book. So yes, that's www.sciencedirect.com, and there were a couple of extracts from a book that talks about some of the sciences around senile dementia. I found it really interesting, but there's a hell of a lot of information there that I can't remember. I couldn't go through, and there was just too much to just sort of put out here. But seriously, go and have a look at it if you want to. It's really interesting. So yeah, I do think you should go and have a look at that. I found it really incredible. But they are extracts from books. But again, look it up. It's incredible. And I'm going really fast, I don't know when, but I found this really fascinating. And I shouldn't be this excited over something that is so serious, but I found this so incredibly fascinating. And the fact that there are so many different types of dementia, and although dementia, it cannot be cured, 100%, you cannot cure dementia. If you have a diagnosis of dementia, it cannot be cured, but can be manageable. Okay, so I did find a list of some of the more common types of dementia. Okay. Right, so what we're going to do now is I'm going to read out those, then I'm going to talk about the subtypes and go from there, because this gets really kind of interesting as we go along. Okay, right, so the types that I found are these. These are the common types, okay? We've got things like Alzheimer's, obviously. Then you've got vascular dementia. And then you have things like dementia from Parkinson's or similar disorders like Parkinson's. Dementia with Lewy bodies. Now, I will look into Lewy body on its own. I have every intention of looking into Lewy body on its own. I have every intention of doing that because I found that really interesting. And I've actually got an entire list of things like that, and Lewy body is actually on there. I'm going to look into it. When I found the correlation, I found a list of absolute correlations between neurological and autoimmune, and Lewy body is on there. So I will be looking into it. Things like, now its actual name is frontotemporal dementia. Its street name is Pick's disease, which is actually easier to say. And there's another one which I find really difficult to pronounce, and it's Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease. Now, I don't know if I pronounced that first bit completely right, but that's what it is. I'm going to look into that too. So yeah, there's two actual conditions that I am actually going to look into in and of themselves, because they're conditions that I think are really fascinating, and I have no idea what they are. So yeah, there will be videos actually coming out of them by themselves at a later date, obviously. So they are the most common types of dementia that I found. Okay, so like I said, I'm not going into hundreds of details in this. All I wanted to do was try to find the most basic information, because obviously there is so much of it out there that if I gave it all to you right now, we'd be here forever. Literally be here forever, going into every minute little detail. So now I did find that there were two kind of groups of dementia. So we've got, I find this a lot in like major conditions, especially I found it a lot in like the disorder, the personality disorders as well, where you've got subgroups of conditions. And it's the same with this. So we've got things like cortical dementia, which is to do with the cerebral cortex, which is the outer layer of the brain, which is to do with your memory and language. Now, that, if somebody has this particular type of dementia, they will have things like severe memory loss, where they can't remember things like words or understand language. So people with Alzheimer's will have cortical dementia. So will people who have the Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease. These are those particular types of dementia are classed as actual cortical dementia, because they affect your memory, and as they decline, as the disease progresses, your memory declines, and so does your ability to understand languages, understand your speech. Your speech declines. Things like that, they do happen. People with Alzheimer's, their understanding of language, their speech will disappear. They will begin to withdraw into themselves. Things like that will start to happen, as the disease takes hold, and that's kind of what will happen. And things like, so when we go into things like the subcortical dementia, this is where you're dealing with like the depth of your brain, like the parts of your brain beneath the cortex. So you're dealing with things like the ability to think clearly, so the speed of your thinking, the ability to start an activity, remember things, You know, the day-to-day living things, you know, when you have to remember what you're doing on a day-to-day basis, you have to um, book appointments, start, you know, decide when you're going to start cleaning your house, or put dinner on, or, you know, go shopping. That's what they're thinking. That's what that is dealing with. That's that kind of thing. Um, and the thinking skills get slower and slower and slower. It gets harder for you to learn new things. It gets harder for you to think about things. But we don't have issues with languages, so you can understand what people are doing, understand what people are thinking. You can say what you want. You can think what you know. It's the thinking part that kind of disappears, not the speech, not the language. You can understand everything. You have no memory issues. So you're talking things like Parkinson's, Huntington's, even HIV. You know, those conditions can cause this type of dementia. And those kind of things did kind of shock me a bit, because when you're talking about dementia, you never consider things like Parkinson's or Huntington's, or even things like HIV. You never consider things like that to be a cause of dementia, but they are. You know, and this is why I thought that this was very important to do first. Because there is also in a class all of its own, is Lewy body, which is why I think this one's important to do as well. Because this one affects both the cortical and the subcortical part of your brain. So this one affects everything. So Lewy body is actually one of the most serious types of dementia you can get. Okay. Like I said, I'm going to look into Lewy body as its whole concept. I think I need to. It's definitely something I'm going to do. But yeah, so there's a lot that goes into diagnosing. There's a lot that goes into dementia that nobody ever really considers or thinks about. You know, because everybody looks at dementia and nobody sees how that could happen. We all seem to think it's this massive issue that it causes memory loss, people get aggressive, people do this, people do that. That's how it goes. You know, it's just a condition all of its own. But when you really understand these kind of issues, that, you know, it can actually lead to things like conditions like Parkinson's and Huntington's can actually cause dementia. That puts a whole new spin on the way you think about the condition and how it works and how it reacts and how it kind of comes about. You know, that can be kind of scary, you know. But there are a lot of early warning signs. There are early warning signs for people to kind of look into. Things like memory issues, things like, and when we're talking memory issues, we're not talking like long-term memory, we're talking short-term memory. So things like recent events. So if you can't remember, if you're having a lot of recent memory issues, so like, now we all can lose our keys, our phones, whatever, but if that's happening on a daily basis, if you can never remember your appointments, if you can never remember the time of day, if you can never remember this, if you can never remember that, if you can never remember your kids' birthdays, if you can never remember, if you keep forgetting, you know, everything on a regular basis, you know, but can still remember like way back, you might be looking at considering talking to a doctor. Because we're also, it's a warning sign, that something's a little off. Things like increased confusions, reduced concentration, even things like personality or behavioural changes. Things like apathy and withdrawal, or even depressions that aren't normal for you. If you're the type of person who's very empathetic or outgoing or bubbly, and that kind of changes, and doesn't change, and everybody's noticing it. It's not just something that you kind of feel it, but everybody's noticing it. It might be a warning sign that something's not right with you, and maybe it's time to go and get seen. There's also things like the loss of ability to do everyday tasks. If you have never had an issue, if you've always gotten up, you've gotten everything done, you get your jobs done, you get your stuff done, get up, you get sorted, get up and ready for the day, and then all of a sudden you have no energy, don't want to do it, don't want to get up, don't want to do anything, just lost that spark a bit, just don't want to do it, lost that ability, or for whatever reason, maybe physically you can't do it rather than just mentally. There are many reasons why people can't just they lose that ability to just like get up and go, but if you've got more than one of these issues going on, it might be a sign and a symptom that you need to go and get sorted out. Now, it is also very important to know that dementia affects people usually around 65. If it affects people younger than 65, they call that early onset dementia. But they call it early onset because unless it affects somebody in their 30s and 40s, it's usually early onset, meaning like 50, 55, because it's before retirement age. To the scientific world, from what I've learned research-wise, the research of it all, early onset means just before retirement. So they're talking 55, 50, 60 maybe. That is early onset dementia. Because dementia affects people 65 and over. So a lot of people look at this list of early warning signs and go, but it's just age. It's just old age. Well, actually, it's not. It's actually a myth that old age brings memory losses, old age brings this, old age brings that, because it doesn't. There are so many people that are in their 50s, 60s, even 70s, whose brains are incredibly active. They can do almost anything. It's a medical conditions. It's a lot of people, they're on medications. It's all of this that changes the way their brains work. But it's not old age that makes them have this ability to lose their memory or forget everything or be confused or any of that. That is just, it's not age at all. It has nothing to do with how old you are. I'm 40 and I have days when my brain just doesn't function. My brain I can't find words that I need. I'm pretty apathetic, which is really strange for me. I have days where my brain just can't really think for itself at all, really properly. It's weird. But I know why it does that. It has nothing to do with dementia. It's to do with my neurological condition. Plus all the medication I'm on. it's not age that does that. You know, it is just not. That is actually just not right. Research has actually shown that it's not an age thing. Yeah. So, but because people put those kind of symptoms down to age, they don't really pay any attention to them, and so they can generally just go unnoticed. But if they do happen and they're happening frequently, you do need to go and get them checked out. Even if you feel a little foolish doing so, don't wait for them to get worse. Just go and be made a fool of. Go and get them looked at. You never know. It might be nothing. It might be something silly. You know, like I said, some of these conditions, there are medical conditions that can cause symptoms that look like dementia. You know, and that can be reversed. So if you've got symptoms that are looking like you might have it, like the memory loss or the confusion or, you know, things like that, getting them checked out is better for you health-wise, so that you can rule out dementia for a start, and you can make sure that your health is where it should be. Because if it's actually just because you have some kind of vitamin deficiency or a thyroid issue or some other health issue that is causing these symptoms, they're easy to solve. You know, but it might be that they're early warning signs and you have the beginnings of dementia or Alzheimer's, which in that case it's better to get looked at now and found out now rather than a few years down the line when it's way worse. You know? But yeah. What time is it? Oh, we're nearly half an hour and I've been waffling on. Right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave it here, and when we come back tomorrow, I'm going to talk about the 10 warning signs of dementia, and yeah, and we'll go from there and do the signs and symptoms. Okay? Yeah, I shall let you all go. Bye.